The snow had been falling for 3 days straight when Marcus Holloway first noticed the sign. It stood at the intersection where Route 47 split toward Silver Ridge, a desolate mountain road that locals avoided after dark. The sign itself was nothing remarkable. Weathered metal, rusted at the edges, writing Silver Ridge 2 miles. But something about it had changed. Marcus slowed his pickup truck, squinting through the frosted windshield. The letters seemed darker, more pronounced, as if someone had repainted them recently. But that made no sense. The county hadn't maintained that road in years, not since the old mining operation shut down in 2009. The handful of families still living up there had to fend for themselves, and they rarely came down to Pine Hollow, the nearest town. He shook his head, dismissing the thought. Though isolation was getting to him. After his divorce 6 months ago, Marcus had retreated to his Latfathers cabin on the outskirts of Pine Hollow, seeking solitude and a fresh start. He'd taken a job as a wildlife surveyor for the Montana Department of Natural Resources, which meant long days alone in the wilderness. It was exactly what he needed, or so he'd told himself. The truck heater sputtered as Marcus continued down Route 47, the sign disappearing in his rearview mirror. The December cold bit through the vehicle's thin walls, and he pulled his flannel jacket tighter. His radio crackled with static, the only station within range fading in and out. He was 15 miles from home, but in this weather, it felt like 100. That night, Marcus couldn't sleep. The cabin's walls creaked under the weight of accumulated snow, and the wind howled through the pine trees like wounded animals. But it wasn't the storm keeping him awake. It was the sign. Something about it nagged at him. A splinter in his mind he couldn't dislodge. At 2:47 Amazonas, he gave up on sleep and opened his laptop. The weak internet connection took minutes to load anything, but eventually, he pulled up the county records. Silver Ridge had a population of 37, according to the last census in 2020. 37 people living 12 miles up a treacherous mountain road, cut off from the world for months at a time during winter. Marcus scrolled through old news articles. Silver Ridge had been a thriving mining town in the 1970s, home to nearly 2,000 people. But when the copper ran dry and the company pulled out, most residents left. Those who stayed did so out of stubbornness or lack of options. The articles painted a picture of hardship, no proper medical facilities, limited electricity, and a community that had learned to survive on its own terms. One article found 2002 caught his attention. It was about a missing person, a 17-year-old girl named Sarah Kenning who disappeared during a winter storm. Search parties had combed the mountain for weeks, but her body was never found. The investigation had gone cold, another tragedy swallowed by the unforgiving landscape. Marcus closed the laptop, a chill running down his spine that had nothing to do with the temperature. Sarah Kenning's face stared at him from the screen's reflection. Dark hair, bright eyes, a smile that suggested she had dreams beyond Silver Ridge. The next morning, Marcus drove past the sign again on his way to survey a wolf pack's territory further east. This time, he stopped. The snow had let up, leaving the world wrapped in pristine white silence. Marcus stepped out of his truck, his boots crunching in the fresh powder. Up close, the sign looked different. The paint wasn't new. It was old, flaking away in places. But there was something underneath, something that had been covered up. Marcus pulled off his glove and ran his fingers over the metal surface. Beneath the words Silver Red, he could feel indentations, letters that had been there before. He scraped at the paint with his thumbnail, and fragments fell away like dead skin. Underneath, barely visible, were different words torn back. Marcus's heart quickened. Someone had painted over a warning. But who? And why? A sound made him turn. A vehicle was approaching from the direction of Silver Ridge, the first he'd seen on this road in weeks. It was an old Jeep, battered and mud-splattered, with chains on its tires. The driver pulled up beside Marcus's truck and rolled down the window. The man behind the wheel was in his 60s, with a weathered face and eyes that had seen 12 hard winters. A thick beard covered most of his features, streaked with gray. He wore a heavy parka and a suspicious expression. "You lost?" The man asked it, his voice rough as gravel. "No, just noticing something odd about this sire," Marcus replied, trying to sound casual. The man's eyes narrowed. Best not to notice things around here. Best to mind your own business and keep moving. I am Marcus Holloway. I work for the Department of Natural Resources. Just doing wildlife surveys in the area. I know who you are, the man said. You were Jim Holloway as a son. Heard you moved back after your marriage fell apart. Marcus felt a flash of irritation. Small-town gossip traveled fast, even up mountains. And you are Dale Pritchard. I live up on Silver Ridge. Been there 40 years. Dale's expression didn't soften. Listen, son, whatever you think you are saying here, whatever curiosity you've got brewing, let it go. That mountainess got a way of bringing out the worst in people who asked Omen questions. What happened to Sarah Kenny? Marcus asked suddenly, surprising himself. Dale's face darkened. For a moment, Marcus thought the old man might drive away without answering. But then Dale spoke, his voice low and bitter. That girl made a mistake. She wanted to leave. Thought she was too good for Silver Ridge. Mountain does not take kindly to people who try to escape. Neither do some of the folks who live there. What does that mean? It means accidents happen in winter. It means sometimes people slip on ice and fall into ravines where nobody can find them. It means you should stick to counting wolves and forget about that sign. Dale shifted the jeep into yard. Your father knew when to leave well enough alone. You'd be smart to do the same. The jeep pulled away, leaving Marcus standing in the cold silence. His father, Dale had mentioned his father like they'd known each other, like Jim Holloway had some connection to Silver Ridge. But Marcus's father had been a contractor, working construction jobs around Montana. He did never mention Silver Ridge, at least not that Marcus could remember. That evening, Marcus went through his father's things. The cabin was still full of Jim Holloway's possessions, boxes Marcus had been avoiding since he'd moved in. He found what he was looking for in the third box, his father's old work journals, leather-bound notebooks where Jim had recorded every job, every client, every detail of his 40-year career. Marcus flipped through pages of notes about foundations and framing, electrical work and plumbing. Then, in a journal from 2011, he found it. A single entry, dated November 15th. Silver Ridge Road sign restoration. County contract. Something wrong with this job. They were hiding something. There were no other entries about Silver Ridge. Nothing explaining what his father had meant. But the handwriting was shaky, uncertain, and like Jim Holloway's usual precise script. Marcus's phone rang, making him jump. It was his supervisor, Karen Chen, calling about tomorrow's survey route. He answered, trying to focus on her words about wolf migration patterns and Sistema de Posicionamento Global coordinates. But his mind kept drifting back to the sign, to Sarah Kenning, to his father's cryptic note. After the call, Marcus made a decision. He would drive up to Silver Ridge. He would find out what happened to Sarah Kenning, what his father had discovered, and why someone had painted over a warning sign. The next morning dawned clear and brutally cold. Marcus loaded his truck with emergency supplies, blankets, food, a satellite phone, flares. The road to Silver Ridge was dangerous even in good weather, and winter made it potentially lethal. But he did grow up in Montana. He knew how to handle himself in the wilderness. The drive took over an hour. The road wound up the mountain in tight sweetie-box, barely wide enough for one vehicle. On one side rose sheer rock faces. On the other drop steep ravines where twisted metal and broken glass marked the graves of vehicles that had slid off in previous winters. Marcus kept his speed low, his hands tight on the wheel. Silver Ridge appeared suddenly, emerging from the pine forest like a ghost town that had somehow remained inhabited. The buildings were mostly original structures from the Mayan days. Wood frame houses with sagging roofs, a general store with boarded windows, a church with a steeple that leaned precariously to one side. Smoke rose from a few chimneys, the only sign of life. Marcus parked in front of what looked like the general store. Through the window, he could see shelves stocked with canned goods and basic supplies. A bell chimed as he pushed open the door, and the smell of wood smoke and old coffee enveloped him. An elderly woman sat behind the counter, knitting with swift, practiced movements. She looked up as Marcus entered, who was sharp despite her age. She wore a floral dress under a thick cardigan, and her white hair was pulled back in a tight bun. "Help you?" she asked, Foi tono neutral. I am looking for information about Sarah Kenning, Marcus said, deciding to be direct. The woman's needles stopped moving. The silence stretched between them like a physical thing. Finally, she spoke. That name is not spoken here anymore. Hasn't been for 12 years. Why not? Because some stories are better left buried with the dead. The woman resumed her knitting, the needles clicking in rhythm. You were Jim Holloway's boy. You look just like him. You knew my father. He did some work here, long time ago. Fixed that sign down on Route 47. Said there was something wrong with it, something that had been covered up. He wanted to know why. The woman's expression was unreadable. We told him the same thing I am telling you. Leave it alone. What was covered up? The woman sat down her knitting and looked at Marcus with an intensity that made him uncomfortable. The truth. The kind of truth that destroys communities, that tears families apart, that makes people lose faith in everything they thought they knew. Your father was smart enough to walk away, are you? Before Marcus could respond, the door opened behind him. Pritchard entered, followed by two younger men Marcus didn't recognize. They were all wearing the same expression. Hard, closed, warning. Told you not to come up here, Dale said to Marcus. This is a free country. I can go where I want, not up here. You can't. One of the younger men stepped forward, his hand resting on his belt where Marcus could see the outline of a hunting knife. Silver Ridge takes care of its own business. We don't need outsiders storing up old pain. Marcus felt his pulse quicken, but he kept his voice steady. A girl disappeared. A girl died. Don't you think your family deserves to know what happened? Your family knows exactly what happened, Dale said quietly. They've made their peace with it. You should though. I don't believe that. I think something terrible happened up here, and everyone has been covering it up for 12 years. The elderly woman behind the counter stood, her chair scraping loudly. Tell him, Dale. Tell him the truth before this gets out of hand. Dale's jaw tightened. For a long moment, he stared at Marcus, weighing something in his mind. Then he sighed, a sound of deep weariness. Fine. But not here. Come with me. Marcus followed Dale out of the store, leaving the two younger men behind. They walked through the snow-covered streets, passing abandoned houses and the skeletal remains of mining equipment. The wind had picked up, carrying with it the promise of another storm. Dale led him to a small house at the edge of town, its paint faded and peeling. Inside, the warmth of a wood stove fought against the cold. An oxygen tank stood in the corner, and Marcus realized this was Dale's home. Dale poured 2 cups of coffee from a pot on the stove and gestured for Marcus to sit at a warm kitchen table. He lowered himself into a chair with a grunt, his breathing labored. Sarah Kenning was my granddaughter, Dale said, the words heavy with grief. Marcus felt his stomach drop. I am sorry. I didn't know. No reason you would. She was a good kid, smart, wanted to go to college. She did gotten accepted to Montana State, full scholarship. She was supposed to leave the January, right after she turned 18. Dale stared into his coffee. She never made it. What happened? There was a party on New Year's Eve, 2012. Most of the young people in Silver Ridge were there, celebrating, drinking. Sarah was excited about leaving, talking about all the things she was going to do, the life she was going to have. Dale's voice cracked. Some of the kids didn't like that. They thought she was being arrogant, rubbing it in their faces that she was getting out while they were stuck here. Who? My son, David, Sarah's father. Dale looked up, and Marcus saw the anguish in his eyes. He'd been drinking, angry that his daughter wanted to leave him behind. They argued. She said things, he said things. It got ugly. And then, Dale's hands trembled around his coffee cup. Then he pushed her. Not hard, he claimed. Just trying to get her to stop talking, to shut up. But she was standing near the stairs. She fell backward, hit her head on the banister. Marcus felt nauseous. She died, instantly. Broken neck. Dale's voice was barely a whisper. David panicked. Some of the other kids helped him. They took her body, drove it deep into the woods, buried her where nobody would ever find her. Then they made up a story about her going for a walk and getting lost in a storm. Jesus Christ. The whole town knew within days. David broke down, confessed to me and a few others. We had a choice. Turn him in, let the law tear our community apart, or handle it ourselves. Deu med Marcus S. Gaz. We chose to protect our own. We made David leave Silver Ridge, told him never to come back. He has been living with that guilt ever since, drinking himself to death in Billings. And we've been living with it though, every day, knowing we helped cover up the death of a beautiful girl who deserved so much more. And the sign, the turn back warning, that was put up after it happened. Some of the kids involved, they felt guilty, wanted to warn people away from this cursed place. But then the candy came to do maintenance. Your father came, and we had to paint over it. Couldn't risk anyone asking questions. Marcus sat back, his mind reeling. This was the truth his father had sensed, the darkness that had been hidden for over a decade. An accidental killing covered up by an entire community. A girl's dreams buried in an unmarked grave somewhere on this frozen mountain. Where is she? Marcus asked. Where is Sarah's body? Dell shook his head. I don't know. David never told me exactly where. Said it was better if no one knew, safer that way. All I know is it is somewhere deep in the forest on the north side of the ridge. You have to report this. It is not a lot. Sarah deserves a proper burial. Her mother deserves to know where her daughter is. Sarah's mother died 5 years ago, cancer. The grief at her Oliva. Dallas' voice hardened. And I am dying too. Emphysema. Evie got maybe 6 months left. When I am gone, the last person who knows the full truth will be dead. That is how it should be. No, that is not how it should be. Marcus stood, anger burning through him. A girl is dead, and everyone just moved on, pretended it didn't happen. We didn't pretend anything. We live with it every single day. Do you know what it is like? Looking at the faces of the people who helped cover up your granddaughter's murder, knowing you chose this, that you let them get away with it. Dallas' eyes were wet. This is our punishment, boy. Living with this secret, letting it poison us from the inside, that is justice enough. It is not. Marcus headed for the door. I am calling the sheriff. I am telling them everything you just told me. Wait. Dale stood, his breathing ragged. If you do that, you will destroy what is left of this community. There are innocent people here, families who had nothing to do with what happened. The media will descend on this place, turn it into a circus. Is that what you want? Marcus paused, his hand on the doorknob. I want Sarah Canning to be found. I want her to have a headstone with her name on it. I want the truth to matter. He walked out into the cold, his breath coming in angry clouds. As he approached his truck, he saw the 2 young men from the store standing near it, and something in their posture made him stop. You need to leave, one of them said. Right now. Or what? You will kill me too? Add another body to the mountain? The men exchanged glances. Nobody is killing anyone, but there are ways to make sure you don't talk. Ways to discredit you, make people think you way crazy or lying. Your divorce didn't exactly paint you stable, did it? All those arguments with your ex-wife, the restraining order she filed, Marcus felt cold that had nothing to do with the weather. How do you know about it? Small state. People talk. And we've been watching you since you showed up snooping around that sign. The man stepped closer. Go home, Marcus. Forget what Dale told you. It is ancient history, and digging it up won't bring Sarah back. But Marcus couldn't let it go. That night, back in his cabin, he called the Flathead County Sheriff's office. He told them everything Dale had said about Sarah Canning's death, the cover-up, the burial. The deputy who took his statement sounded skeptical but promised to investigate. 3 days later, a search team went up to Silver Ridge. They questioned Dale Pritchard, who denied everything. He claimed Marcus had misunderstood, that he'd been talking hypothetically about what could have happened, not what did happen. The other residents backed him up. No one admitted to anything. No one broke ranks. Without a body, without physical evidence, there was nothing the sheriff could do. The case remained closed. Sarah Canning remained missing, officially lost in a winter storm in 2012. Marcus became obsessed. He spent weeks combing through property records, old photographs, trying to piece together where Sarah might be buried. He studied topographical maps, marked off sections of forest, planned search routes. His work suffered. His supervisor called with increasing concern about missed deadlines and incomplete reports. On a gray afternoon in February, Marcus drove back up to Silver Ridge. He parked at the edge of town and hiked into the forest on the north side of the ridge, following game trails and Sistema de Posicionamento Global coordinates. The snow was deep, making every step an effort. He searched for hours, finding nothing but trees and rocks and the occasional frozen stream. As darkness fell and the temperature plummeted, Marcus realized he was lost. The trails looked the same in every direction, and his flashlight was dying. He tried his satellite phone, but the battery was dead. He'd been so focused on searching that he'd forgotten to monitor his equipment. Panic set in. He was miles from his truck, alone in sub-zero temperatures without proper shelter. He began walking what he hoped was west, back toward the road, but the terrain grew more treacherous. He slipped on hidden ice, fell hard, felt something in his ankle twist and snap. The pain was excruciating. Marcus lay in the snow, unable to put weight on his injured leg. He tried to crawl, but every movement sent agony shooting through his body. The cold began to seep into his bones, and he knew he was in serious trouble. Then he saw light through the trees, a flashlight, bobbing toward him. Relief flooded through him. Someone had come looking for him. But as the figure emerged from the darkness, Marcus's relief turned to dread. It was Dale Pritchard, alone, carrying a hunting rifle along with the flashlight. "Heard you were up here," Dale said, his breath misting in the frigid air. "Figured you'd get yourself in trouble eventually. My ankle is broken. I need help." Dale knelt beside him, studying Marcus's face. "You just called in to let it go, could you? Had to keep taking, keep pushing. Just like your father." Something in Dale's tone made Marcus's blood run cold. "What about my father?" Jim Holloway came back here, 6 months after he restored that sign. He'd been researching, asking questions, piecing things together just like you. He confronted me, said he knew what had happened to Sarah, said he was going to the authorities. Dale's face was expressionless in the harsh flashlight beam. "We couldn't let him do that." "What did you do?" "We made it look like an accident, a fall on a construction site, scaffolding that collapsed. Your father was alone when it happened, and nobody questioned it. These things happen in our line of work." Dale stood, the rifle hanging loose in his hands. "I am sorry, Marcus. I genuinely am. You seem like a good kid, but some secrets are worth protecting, no matter the cost." Marcus's mind raced. His father hadn't died in an accident. He'd been murdered, killed by these people to protect their secret. And now they were going to kill him too. "You want to get away with this," Marcus said, trying to keep his voice steady. "People know I am here. The sheriff's office, my supervisor, they'll investigate. They'll find evidence that you went hiking alone, ignored weather warnings, and got lost in a storm. A tragic accident, just like your father." Dale raised the rifle. "I am sorry it is to be this way, but Silver Ridge protects its own." But before Dale could pull the trigger, a voice cut through the darkness. "Put the gun down, Dad." A woman stepped into the light, and Marcus recognized her from the general store. The elderly woman who'd been knitting. Except now he could see she imagined to be as old as he'd thought, maybe mid-60s, her face weathered by mountain life but still strong. "Helen, go back to town," Dale said, not lowering the rifle. "I said put it down. This has gone far enough." Helen moved closer, and Marcus saw she was holding a pistol of her own, aimed at Dale. 12 years of living with Sarah's death was bad enough. "I am not adding to more murders to that burden." He knows everything. About Sarah, about his father. "We can let him leave." "Yes, we can. Because I am done with the leash. I am done with this cursed place and all its secrets." Helen's voice was firm. "I am Sarah's aunt, Marcus. Her mother was my sister. Evie lived with the guilt of covering up her death every single day since it happened. I want to compound that by helping you kill an innocent man." Dale's rifle wavered. "If you do this, if you let him go, you will destroy everyone. We destroyed ourselves 12 years ago when we chose silence over truth. This is just the bill coming due." For a long moment, the three of them stood frozen in the darkness, the only sound the whine through tapinage. Then Dale lowered his rifle, his shoulders sagging in defeat. "Help him," Helen said. Get him back to his truck. I'll follow you down to make sure nothing else happens. Dale helped Marcus to his feet, supporting his weight as they made their slow way back through the forest. No one spoke. The pain in Marcus's ankle was nearly unbearable, but he gritted his teeth and kept moving. At his truck, Helen gave Marcus a piece of paper. These are the coordinates where Sarah is buried. David finally told me last year, when he was dying. The coordinates are precise. You'll find her body 6 feet down, wrapped in a blue tarp. Marcus took the paper with shaking hands. Thank you. Don't thank me. Just make sure her story is told. Make sure people know what we did, what we became. We deserve whatever comes next. Helen looked at Dale, her expression sad. All of us. Marcus drove down the mountain in the early hours of the morning, his ankle throbbing, his mind trying to process everything that had happened. He went straight to the sheriff's office, gave them the coordinates, told them everything about his father's murder and Dale's attempt on his life. The excavation took place 3 weeks later. They found Sarah Kenning exactly where Helen said she did be, still wrapped in the blue tarp that had been her burial shroud. The coroner confirmed the cause of death, a broken neck consistent with a fall. The investigation that followed tore Silver Ridge apart. David Pritchard's role in Sarah's death came to light, though he did die of liver failure 2 years earlier. Dale Pritchard was arrested for Jim Holloway's murder and the attempted murder of Marcus. The 3 men who they helped dispose of Sarah's body were charged as accessories. Helen Mercer was charged as an accessory after the fact for her role in the cover-up. The media descended on Silver Ridge just as Dale had predicted, turning it into a national story. The remaining residents, men of whom had known nothing about the crimes, found themselves under a microscope, their community forever associated with murder and cover-up. Marcus watched it unfold from a distance, recovering from his ankle injury in his cabin. He felt no satisfaction in being right, no vindication, only sadness for Sarah Kenning, whose young life had been cut short by violence and then buried by shame, and grief for his father, who they paid the ultimate price for trying to do the right thing. Sarah Kenning was finally laid to rest in the Pine Hollow Cemetery on a sunny April day. Fewer than a dozen people attended. Marcus was there, standing at the back, watching as the coffin was lowered into the ground. The headstone was simple: her name, her date, and the words "For dreams live on." After everyone had left, Marcus approached the grave. He placed a hand on the fresh earth and spoke quietly. "I am sorry it took so long. I am sorry for what they did to you, and I am sorry my father called in to finish what he started. But you ain't not forgotten anymore. Your story is out there now. That has to count for something." As she turned to leave, he saw Dale Pritchard being led to a police vehicle and handcuffs nearby, having been brought to witness the burial as part of his plea agreement. The old man looked broken, a shell of the tough mountain resident Marcus had first met. Their eyes met across the cemetery, and Marcus saw no defiance there, only exhaustion and regret. Marcus drove past the sign on Route 40 y said one last time. Someone had scraped away all the paint, revealing both messages: Silver Ridge 2 miles, and underneath, turn back. The county had decided to leave it that way, a memorial to what happens when communities choose silence over truth. But as Marcus looked at the sign in his rearview mirror, he noticed something that made his blood run cold. They, in fresh paint at the bottom, were no words he hadn't seen before. "SNT alone." Marcus slammed on the brakes, his heart racing. He jumped out of the truck and ran back to the sign. The words were definitely there, the paint still wet, dripping slightly in the afternoon sun. "SNT alone." What did that mean? Had there been other victims? Other disappearances that Silver Ridge had covered up? Marcus pulled out his phone and began searching through missing persons reports from the area, his hands shaking. Then he stopped, because he realized the truth was even more horrifying than multiple victims. Marcus drove back up to Silver Ridge, his mind racing. He found Helen Mercer at her house, packing boxes. She deposited bail and was preparing to move away before her trial. "What does it mean?" Marcus demanded, showing her a photo of the sign on his phone. "She wasn't alone." "What does that mean?" Helen's face went pale. She sank into a chair, aged 20 years in a moment. "I was hoping you'd never find out." "Find out what?" Sarah didn't die from the fall. She was unconscious, badly hurt, but she was alive. Helena's voice was barely a whisper. David panicked, called Dale, called the others, and they decided it was easier to let her die than to face the consequences. They drove her up to the woods and buried her while she was still breathing. Marcus felt a world tilt. She was alive. She suffocated in the grave. Not alone. Someone stayed with her, sitting on the top to keep her from making noise, to make sure she died. The person held her down while she struggled, while she tried to breathe, until finally she stopped moving. Helen was crying now, tears streaming down her weathered face. It wasn't a murder by accident anymore. It was deliberate. And I knew. Evie always known. Who? You stayed with her. Helen looked up, and then her eyes Marcus saw the answer before she spoke. I did. I stayed with my niece while she died, because I was too much of a coward to stand up to the men in this town, to my father, to my husband. I felt her last breaths against my hands. I heard her trying to cry for help, and I held her down until she was gone. The confession hung in the air between them, monstrous in its honesty. Marcus backed away, horrified not just by what Helen had done, but by the casual cruelty of it, the calculated nature of it. I am turning myself in, Helen said. Evie already called my lawyer. I am going to tell them everything, plead guilty to first-degree murder. I can't live with this anymore. I can't wake up every morning seeing her face, feeling her last heartbeats against my palms. Why tell me? Why not let me think it was just an accident? Because you deserve to know the truth. All of it. No more secrets, no more lies. Sarah deserves that much. Helen stood, her movement slow and tired. And because I need you to know that monsters don't always look like monsters. Sometimes they look like ordinary people, grandmothers and shopkeepers who make a single terrible choice and then spend the rest of their lives trying to justify it. Marcus left Silver Ridge for the last time as the sun set behind the mountains. In his rearview mirror, he could see smoke rising from chimneys, families gathering for dinner, life continuing in the cursed town. But he knew the truth now. He knew what evil lurked in those ordinary houses, what darkness could hide behind kind faces and welcoming smiles. The sign on Silver Ridge was eventually removed by the county, deemed too disturbing to remain. But Marcus could never forget it, never forget the warning that should have been heeded. Turn back. Because some places are poisoned by the sins of their residents, and some secrets are too dark to ever be fully cleansed. Silver Ridge was such a place, and even now, with the truth exposed and justice slowly grinding forward, Marcus knew that the mountain would keep its secrets. There would be others, other disappearances, other leash, other families willing to do anything to protect their own. Helen Mercer was sentenced to life in prison without parole, her confession detailed and devastating. Dale Pritchard receives 2 consecutive life sentences for Jim Holloway's murder and the attempted murder of Marcus. The 3 men who they helped bury Sarah received sentences ranging from 15 to 25 years. Silver Ridge itself slowly died. The remaining residents left one by one, unable to live with the stigma, unable to look at each other without wondering what other secrets might be hidden. By winter, only a handful of people remained, clinging to their homes out of stubbornness or nowhere else to go. Marcus Holloway left Mountain entirely, unable to stay in a state that held so much death and betrayal. He moved to Oregon, took a job with the Forest Service, and tried to rebuild his life. But on cold winter nights, when the wind howled through the trees, he sometimes dreamed of that sign, of the warnings painted and covered and painted again, and he woke gasping, feeling phantom hands pressing down on him, stealing his breath. The real horror, he learned, wasn't in the supernatural or the impossible. It was in the human capacity for evil, for self-preservation at any cost, for looking at a dying girl and choosing silence over mercy. That was the true dark omen from the isolated peak, the knowledge that ordinary people, given the right circumstances and the wrong choices, can become monsters. In some way, in other isolated places across America, Marcus knew the same cycle was probably playing out. Other secrets being buried, other warnings being covered up, other communities choosing darkness over light. Because that's what people do when they lie scared, when they lie desperate, when they love their own more than they love the truth. The sign might be gone, But its message remained, written in the blood and bones of Sarah Kennedy, in the ashes of Jim Holloway, and the twisted wreckage of a community that chose wrong.